Today I want to talk about cycling groups to avoid. Hello legends and super legends, welcome to Veloharmony. I was moved today to do an impromptu video. There's a new guy that came to the channel and posted a comment. And I've been riding almost 3 decades and I just couldn't believe what I read. And I believed what he wrote, but I just couldn't believe that there are groups out there actually doing the things that he was stating in his comment. So I'm going to dissect it. And he mentioned that he was stressed out in a group and he ended up leaving. Well, good for you. Find another group or start your own, because what they're doing, I've never heard of. Makes no sense. So let's take it apart. The guy's name is Node. He says he's responding to probably the group ride, I believe. Let me go back and see. Yeah, the last group ride that I loaded called Uphill Attack is what Node is responding to. And I'm going to read it and then take it apart because I already replied to him and told him good for you. I told him the group was ludicrous. He says, seems like a chill group. I guess chill means cool or something like that, you know. In the A rides in my local club, a lot of this type of riding shown in the video will get people mad or annoyed. Well, they need to get over it. I would love to show up on their rides one day and let them tell me this nonsense they've been telling you. He said that is oscillating side to side while pedaling. I'm not sure what he means by oscillating, because I remember somebody came to the channel and said that I looked like I was floating. You know, how you ride is how you ride. And I think what he may mean is, what I say, when you're following people, don't follow directly behind, and you need to be left or you can go right. You use that to slow yourself down. And if that's what he's talking about and they're getting mad, they can get over it, you know. He said that is oscillating side to side while pedaling. I don't know if you noticed, but you do wobble side to side with each stroke. So I guess he means when I'm pedaling, my bike is moving like that. I don't control that. I just pedal. The bike does what it does. Now I know I'm tracking my line. When I do move side to side, it's intentional. It's not because of my pedaling. I am moving to the side so I can see around the person in front of me, to know where those obstacles are or to know what's coming up the road. I talk about that, Node. If you watch some of the other rides, Node, get caught up. I got a lot of group rides out there. You'll see what I'm talking about. That's intentional. When I'm pedaling, I can hold a straight line if I choose to, but I go side to side so I can see around the riders in front of me. That's the way you ride in a group, because there are a lot of things going on, but I'm not really changing my line that much. It's a slight, we call it a drift. You drift and you drift so that you can see around the rider in front of you. And I'm glad that you do the same, because that's the way to ride. He said something about suddenly stopping pedaling to stand for bumps. So that's the one that really got me laughing hard. I'm supposed to ride over bumps? I mean, think about it. When you ride solo, do you ride over bumps? Why would you want to ride over bumps? Makes no sense. You're supposed to stand over bumps. The professionals stand over bumps. Every cyclist I've ever come across stand over bumps. I don't know who these guys are, but if they're riding over bumps, they don't have a clue. I mean, I don't care if it's the A group. That's a joke. We have guys in the group we're riding with, A group. Let them come join us and ride over bumps. Let's see how long their wheels last or their rear. I mean, come on. You're running over obstacles. You're going to have a flat. You're increasing your chances of a flat. Nobody rides over bumps. These guys are posers. Then he said, and gaps in between the wheels over a foot. So who exactly is measuring the gaps between the wheels while the group is going along? There's one of them got a ruler that they'll get annoyed. They'll get over it. When there's a gap between the wheel, if it's too wide of a gap, I talk about it in all the rides. What you do is you go ahead and close the gap by going around the rider. There are some riders that are getting gapped because they can't hold the pace. So they're going to get annoyed because somebody's getting dropped. Really? I don't know who these guys are, but it doesn't sound it doesn't sound right to me, and it wouldn't sound right to most riders. So good for you that you left. They have nothing to teach you. It's kind of like teaching bad habits. You're gonna get annoyed because somebody has a wider gap than 12 inches. 12 inches is a guide node. You can leave any gap you want to leave. If somebody's doing something unsafe in the group, I always talk about it. You give them more room by backing off. When the speeds pick up, if you watch the pros, when you're going downhill, you don't follow no 12 inches or whatever. There are no rules. You give yourself more room so you can have more stopping distance if something happens on a descent. It's all a guide, and then you adjust. The reason why they come and say about a foot. When we go fast, it's close. I'd be within an inch or two. You tighten it up. That's by choice. If there's a bump, I will stop pedaling and go over the bump. That's just the way it is. Nobody pedals while they're braking. And I think that's one of the things that you mentioned, which really made me laugh. He said they say to keep power constant, even over bumps. Really? If you're keeping the power constant, is there a prearranged power you're supposed to keep? The power in a group, any group, changes all the time. When somebody decides to attack, what power are they holding? That's not a constant power. Boom, they're going. There is no constant. You ride at a power that keeps you with the group. I think maybe that's what you meant. But if there's a bump, why would I keep pedaling? I need to go over this obstacle. What do they do when there's glass on the road? Do they ride through the glass? Makes no sense. I don't know how you could have ridden with them any appreciable amount of time. He said, they said basically never stop pedaling because it alarms the rider behind you. Really? What happens when you stop pedaling on a fast road, on a flat road? The bike is still rolling. So if I'm coasting or if I'm soft pedaling, that alarms the rider behind me. Maybe the rider behind me shouldn't be in the group. I mean, come on. What is this? They sound like the soup Nazi. Those of you who saw Seinfeld, the soup Nazi, to order soup, you had to come to the counter, place your order, drop the money, and then, before you left the store. I mean, really? Come on, man. Come on. It sounds amazing. I mean, I didn't know that there were groups like this out there. Now, he said, never stop pedaling because it alarms the rider directly behind you, but instead, you're supposed to feather your brakes while pedaling if you need to slow. Ignore that. Why use your brakes if you can use the wind to slow you down? Now, I agree that you feather your brakes in the pack if you must use the brakes. You don't lock it up. You use that to slow you down. But you don't keep pedaling while you're braking. Do you keep accelerating in your car while you're braking? Do you put your foot on the accelerator and brake? I don't know how you drive, but I use one foot for the brake and the accelerator. I use this for my clutch. Even if I drive an automatic car, I use my right leg for the brake and the accelerator. I leave the accelerator when I brake. So how exactly do you keep pedaling? You're putting on power, but you're feathering your brakes? That doesn't make any sense. So those guys, I don't know where they learn how to ride. They got it all backwards. If this is really what they're telling you to do. So you're not learning from them. Good thing you moved on. Then it said, he said, I understand why these rules are there since they like to keep it fast and tight. That does not make the group fast and tight, node. When you're going fast, it gets smooth. But it doesn't mean that you don't slow down. What do you do when there's a red light? Do you ride until you get to the light, then lock up the brakes because you're not supposed to slow down? You're not supposed to stop pedaling? I mean, come on. You stop pedaling when you see a yellow or whatever, and you coast to the line, just like you would do in your car. You back off the gas. So nothing they're saying here to you makes any kind of sense. I can see why you found it stressful. That makes no sense. And you said, this all made for me a stressful ride, led me to leave the club. Now, I'm glad you left the club. It's not because it was only stressful to you, but because they're teaching you the wrong thing. You go to a grand fondo or a race or whatever, you don't have to be competitive to experience it. You ride anywhere, anything goes. Okay? You need to lift off the saddle when you come to uneven pavement. I mean, why would you sit and go over it and tear up your gear? Why would you keep pedaling while braking? That doesn't even make any sense. And why would you strive to maintain 12 inches behind a wheel? You get as close as you need to take the benefit of the draft. The next guy might want to be 2 inches behind somebody because he's more comfortable. The next guy might want to be a foot. The next guy might be 2 feet behind because he's not comfortable following this squirrely rider that's in front of him. It's just a guide. The reason why the 12 inch or 1 foot is there is that's when the draft really begins to take effect. The closer you are, it's a guide. So to tell everybody in the group, you always need to be, no, you strive for that, but you don't. Who cares if the whole group does it? You tell each rider that if you want to benefit from the draft, that's what you do. When you're riding or when you're racing, what are you going to do? Tell your competitor, hey man, you got to be a foot behind that guy. He's going to flip you off. If he's struggling, who cares? You go around him. When the gap opens, you go around him. What they should have done was to teach you that when the gap begins to widen, get around that rider that's causing the gap so that you don't have to work so hard. That's what we do here. So I'm glad you found this channel, because this is not the reason I set up this channel. I didn't know that there were groups out there giving misinformation, but I knew that there were riders who just simply didn't know. I mean, it takes a lot of effort to teach somebody the wrong way to do things. So I think they're stressed too, because everything they're doing goes against what happens in the real world. I mean, think about it. That's why you were stressed out. It's almost impossible to say, I have to maintain a foot all the time. You can't do that. What do you do when you come to an intersection? You see our group, we spread out. We take up the lane and we open up so that we can have more room just in case the light changes before we get there. We start to coast so we don't have to come to a complete stop if we can avoid it. You know, I have another video. I'll put the link here that you need to be careful what groups you hook up with. I already had made that video before, but yours is it was a unique thing to read that it just blew my mind that there are groups out there actually telling people these things. I'd love to show up at one of their rides and have one of them tell me that nonsense. You know, I mean, come on, man. You're going over bumps, you're supposed to sit down. So when you go through glass, you sit down. I mean, come on. Everything they said to you is wrong. I don't know how you clean it out of your database, but, you can get caught up on the channel here. Watch our group rides. We got a bunch of videos in the group ride playlist where I'm talking about how you ride in a group. That's any group. That's a racing group, grand fund or whatever. That's the way it really works. So they've been telling you to do the wrong things, and that's why you were stressed out. They took truthful things and then they twisted it around. Okay. I'm going to summarize for you by saying that the 1 foot rules, the 1 foot rule is not really a rule. It is a suggestion that says, if you want to benefit from the draft, you need to be a foot or less behind the wheel you're following to benefit from the draft. But I always teach that when you are following somebody, never follow directly behind. It's like driving your car behind a tractor trailer real close. You can't see around. So when you're following a rider, you stay off to one side or the other. Watch the professionals in Europe or even here in the US, all the big races. They don't follow directly behind, and it's a yo-yo effect. The group is a living thing. There are people coming on your right, coming on your left. There are no rules. People can pass you. So if you're going to change your line, you have to look. Those are the things that you will pick up when you watch these group rides. I know you just came to the channel, but backtrack and look at the older rides, all the rides we have in there. There are different tips. That's the reason I narrate those rides, for the very thing that you posted here, to teach people how to ride in the pack. That stuff they've been telling you, they took things that are true and then they twisted it. Like the joke I made about the soup Nazi in Jerry Seinfeld. Okay, so these guys are like the group Nazi, I guess. That's the way I would call them. You know, so kudos to you. Find another group. Find a group that knows what they're doing, that can really let you be yourself. Because you're supposed to ride, as long as you're riding safely, anything goes. Okay? And you need to do what comes naturally. Nobody pedals while they're braking. Nobody rides into debris or over a crack or a bump in the road without stopping their pedaling to stand up to go over it. I mean, where do you get that crap from? It makes no sense. It affects the rider behind. We had a group that we used to ride with a little over a year ago, and their thing was, they weren't as bad as your group, but I ended up leaving anyway. Their thing was sprinting was bad for the group because it wreaked havoc on the other riders. My attitude was, when I sprint, don't follow me. That's all you got to do. So with that, I'm going to wrap it up. Note, run the heck away from those guys. They have nothing to teach you. And that group, their group will die. What I mean, it will not grow. It will not be like a flower that blooms. They will not attract other riders. The same reason you left, more people will leave and that group will die. Mark my words. So with that being said, keep getting your K's in and eliminate all that crap they tried to teach you. Go with your instinct. That's why you left. Get your K's in.